Welcome to the Eddie Hyatt Podcast. I'm your host and teacher, Eddie Hyatt, and I'm so glad to be with you today as we continue talking about the events of Holy Week, beginning with Palm Sunday and then concluding with Resurrection Sunday, which will be this coming Sunday. Now, today, we may have to continue this into next week. There's just so much material to unpack. Today, I feel in my heart that I want to talk to you about the role of women around Jesus at the time, especially around the time of Jesus at his death and his crucifixion. And so I'm going to read some passages related to this, but maybe I'll go ahead and read a very important one. I think it's Luke. Is it Luke chapter 10? Let's see. Just bear with me for a moment. Let me turn over to this passage. I think it's chapter 6 of Luke, where it talks about all of the women that were with Jesus and following him. Um, yes, it's not that. Uh, okay, here it is. It says, now it came to pass afterward that he went through every city and village, preaching and bringing the good tidings of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and certain women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom had come 7 demons, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for him from their substance. Wow. So here we see these many women who are a part of the company of Jesus' disciples. Jesus had many disciples beyond the 12, and many of them were women, and many of them were supporting him out of their means, out of their own substance and goods. Now, many of these women followed him all the way to Jerusalem and were there for those eventful moments of his arrest, crucifixion, and all of this. And let me just read to you some of the passages. It says, and a great multitude of people followed him. Now, and this is when he is being taken, carrying his cross. He's bloody, he's beaten, and he's got the crown of thorns on. It says, and a great multitude of people followed him, and women who also mourned and lamented him. But all his acquaintances and the women who followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. The women who followed him from Galilee. And now these passages are all related to this time around the crucifixion. And Luke 23, verse 55 says, and the women who had come with him from Galilee followed after, and they observed the tomb and how his body was laid. Now, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, this would be Resurrection morning, Resurrection Sunday. Now these were certain women, Mary Magdalene and others, they and certain other women with them came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. Then they returned from the tomb and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them. Um, so here's the thing: we see from the Gospels that the 11 disciples, the men, uh, they were afraid and they hid out. They were behind closed doors, and they had, there was reason to be, because now the authorities are likely going to be coming after the followers of Jesus. Now that they have him, they're going to, they're going to put a total stop to this whole movement. And so, and they are aware that Jesus made claims of being raised from the dead. That is why, that is the reason that they asked Pilate. They said, when this deceiver, they called Jesus a deceiver, when he was alive, he claimed he would rise from the dead. And so they asked him for a special watch, for a special Roman guard. And so the Romans, they put a seal across the stone, the door. They had a stone in front of it, and then they put a seal across that. which meant that anybody who broke that seal, who moved that stone and broke the seal, would be subject to the Roman authorities. And brothers, you didn't want to, in the natural, you didn't want to get in trouble with Rome. So not only did they seal the tomb, but they posted a guard of Roman soldiers to make sure he didn't come out. So the men are in hiding, but the women, they have observed where the body was laid, and they go there on Sunday morning, resurrection morning, and they find the tomb empty. And and there is an angel that appears there and says, "Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here; he is risen." And so they rush out and they run to tell the 11, but they don't want to believe them. But then also, then Jesus, he appears first before anybody else to Mary Magdalene. For example, Mark chapter 16, verse 9 11 says, "Now when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast seven demons. He went and told those who had been with him as they mourned and wept." Now, here's a question. Why did Jesus appear first to Mary Magdalene? Why didn't he appear first to somebody important, like the Roman governor, or like the high priest, or at least to Peter or John? Why does he appear to this woman who has had a shady background? Mark says that Jesus cast seven demons out of her. Why does he appear first to her? And obviously, he does it on purpose. He does not appear to her. It wasn't an accidental appearance. He didn't come out of the tomb and say, "Oh, Mary, I didn't know I was going to run into you today." No, he purposely appeared first to her to make a statement. Jesus knew that actions speak louder than words, and he was always doing things to teach lessons to his disciples. When he wanted to teach them about humility, he didn't first give them a lecture. He first took the role of a servant, girded a towel, and washed the feet of his disciples, which in that culture was something that was done by slaves and household servants. Then he gave them a talk about the importance of humility and washing one another's feet. And so he's appearing to Mary Magdalene because you have to remember that in both Jewish and Roman courts of law, in their legal system, the testimony of a woman was not allowed as evidence. Did you hear that? In both Jewish and Roman courts of law, a woman's testimony would not be allowed as evidence in a trial because women were so looked down upon and marginalized and uh, and so ridiculed and I'm looking for the opposite word of esteem. They were looked down upon. They were not respected. Their testimony had no value in courts of law. And so Jesus, to make a powerful statement to his disciples that, hey, it's not going to be like this in my kingdom. A new era has dawned. By the way, the when the Passover, when Jesus brought or when God brought the Jews out of Egypt, uh, he established that this would be the first month, Nisan. It was the first. He established it as the first month. This is going to be a whole new beginning. And Jesus, the fulfillment of the Passover lamb, his resurrection ushered in a whole new beginning for humanity. And Jesus was saying, hey, this is a new day. It's a new day for people who have been put down and marginalized and shunted aside. And so he appears first to Mary Magdalene and gives her the privilege of being the first preacher of the good news of the resurrection. She receives the first apostolic commission from the risen Lord because the word apostle, it's not a church office. It simply means a sent one or one who is sent. And I just I just published a book called Apostolic Leadership. I have a whole chapter about women apostles, and I go into much detail about Mary Magdalene receiving the first apostolic commission from the risen Lord. And so uh, Jesus sent Mary Magdalene to give testimony, to be a witness to the most important event in all of human history. And by this, he made a very powerful statement that he valued and he esteemed the testimony, the preaching, the witness, the testimony of women. He made that so very clear. He sent her to tell the men that he was alive. Now, in Mark's gospel, it said that they didn't believe her. They didn't believe the women who came and told them. But later, when Jesus appeared to them, it says that he rebuked them for their hardness of heart because they did not believe the ones he had sent. Well, the Southern Baptist Convention needs to hear that, don't they? Because out of their hardness of heart, they refuse women to have the right to teach and to have any kind of leadership, to even have a title of pastor, can't even be a children's pastor, can't even have that title. Oh, my friends, Jesus rebuked them for their hardness of heart. May God deliver the church from hardness of heart, because it's not an intellectual thing. It's not even a biblical thing. Sue and I and others have explained the biblical passage that people use. It's hardness of heart. It's prejudice and hardness of heart that people continue to marginalize women and to not allow them to freely exercise and function in the gifts and callings that God has given them. So, such a powerful message along these lines here on the resurrection. And I can see we're going to have to continue this, but we'll bring this to a close for today. Check out my books, Discovering the Real Jesus, and also Apostolic Leadership. Learn more about Mary Magdalene and true apostolic ministry in the New Testament. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. God bless you.